I stared at the eviction notice taped to my parents' front door, my hand trembling as I held my phone. The voicemail from Madison was still playing in my ear. "Rachel, we need to talk. It's bad. Really bad. 3 years." It had been 3 years since I'd stood in this same driveway, begging them to help save Sophie's life. Let me take you back to where this all started. It was March 2022 when Dr. Patterson sat me down in his sterile office at Dallas Presbyterian Hospital. Sophie had been getting sicker for months. The headaches, the swelling, the exhaustion that left my 8-year-old daughter too weak to play with her friends. "End-stage renal disease," he said, his voice careful and measured. "Sophie needs a kidney transplant, and she needs it soon." The room spun. I'd already lost my husband James 2 years earlier in a car accident. Sophie was all I had left. She was my entire world. "How soon?" I managed to ask. "Without a transplant, she has maybe 6 months. The waiting list for a cadaver kidney is 3 to 5 years. Your best option is finding a living donor." I got tested immediately. Wrong blood type. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces that day. Dr. Patterson walked me through the costs. Even with my insurance as a registered nurse at the same hospital, I was looking at $120,000 out of pocket. The transplant surgery itself was $80,000. The anti-rejection medication Sophie would need for the rest of her life? Another $40,000 just to start. I had $8,000 in my savings account. I sold everything. My car became a 15-year-old Honda I bought off Craigslist for $3,000. I listed my wedding ring on eBay. I started working double shifts, sometimes 16 hours a day, coming home to find Sophie curled up on the couch, her skin gray, her beautiful brown eyes dimmed by exhaustion and pain. 3 times a week, I drove her to dialysis. She was the youngest patient there by 40 years. The elderly patients would try to make her smile, sharing their hard candies and telling her jokes. Sophie would laugh, but I could see the fear behind her eyes every time the nurses inserted the needles into her small arm. "Mommy," she whispered to me one night after dialysis. "Am I going to die like Daddy?" I held her so tight I was afraid I might break her. "No, baby. Mommy's going to fix this. I promise." But promises cost money I didn't have. I set up a GoFundMe page. My coworkers shared it. My friends from nursing school posted it everywhere. After 2 months, I'd raised $30,000. It was incredible, generous, more than I ever expected. But it wasn't enough, not even close. The bank turned me down for a loan. "You're already carrying your mortgage and your husband's medical debt from the accident," the loan officer said, not meeting my eyes. "I'm sorry. I put the house on the market. But even selling it would only get me to $85,000, maybe $90,000. Still $30,000 short." That's when I called my parents. I should tell you about my family. My father, David, made his fortune in commercial real estate in the 90s and retired at 55. My mother, Patricia, spent her days at the country club and planning charity galas where she could show off her designer dresses. They lived in a 6,000 square foot house in Highland Park, the wealthiest neighborhood in Dallas. And then there was Madison, my little sister. 26 years old, with 300,000 Instagram followers and a lifestyle blog about luxury and living your best life. She'd never worked a real job in her life. My parents funded everything. Her apartment in Uptown, her Range Rover, her shopping trips to New York and LA. Madison was getting married in June to Brett, a finance bro whose family was even richer than ours, and my parents were paying for the wedding. I knew they had money. I'd never asked them for anything after James died. I'd been independent, proud, determined to make it on my own. But this was Sophie's life. I drove to their house on a Saturday morning in May. Sophie was in the hospital again after a bad dialysis session. I'd left her with my best friend Sarah, who was a pediatric nurse. Mom answered the door in tennis whites, a mimosa in her hand. It was 10 a.m. "Rachel, what a surprise. We're just about to head to the club, but come in for a minute." The house looked exactly the same as always. Pristine, perfect, cold. Dad was in the living room, reading the Wall Street Journal. He looked up when I entered, his expression neutral. "Rachel, everything all right?" I stood there in my scrubs, having come straight from a night shift. I probably smelled like hospital antiseptic and exhaustion. "I need to talk to you both. It's about Sophie." Mom's face tightened slightly. She'd never been comfortable with medical talk, even when it was her own granddaughter's life on the line. I laid it all out. The diagnosis, the transplant, the cost, the fact that I'd done everything I could and was still $30,000 short. "I'll pay you back," I said, hating how desperate I sounded. "I'll sell the house. I'll work extra shifts. Whatever it takes. But Sophie can't wait for me to save up. She needs the surgery in the next 2 months or—" I couldn't finish the sentence. The silence that followed felt like drowning. Dad folded his newspaper carefully, setting it on the coffee table. "Rachel, you know we'd love to help. But the timing is impossible." "Impossible?" Mom jumped in, her voice taking on that bright, brittle quality she used when she was about to say something awful and wanted to pretend she wasn't. "Honey, we've got Madison's wedding in 3 weeks. We're tapped out. The deposits, the venue, the flowers, the band. It's all been so expensive." Something cold settled in my chest. "How expensive?" "Well," Mom laughed nervously. "You know Madison. She's always dreamed of a destination wedding. The resort in Cancun is absolutely gorgeous. Have you seen the photos she's been posting?" I hadn't. I'd muted Madison on Instagram months ago because watching her post about dress fittings and bachelorette parties while Sophie was dying felt like being stabbed repeatedly. "How much?" I asked again. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "The wedding isn't relevant here, Rachel. The point is we've already committed that money. We can't just pull it back now." "How much?" $350,000, Mom said quietly. The number hit me like a physical blow. I actually stumbled backward. "You're spending $350,000 on a wedding, on one day, and you won't loan me $30,000 to save your granddaughter's life?" "It's not a loan if you might not be able to pay it back," Dad said, his voice maddeningly reasonable. "And we both know with your financial situation, that's a real possibility. We'd essentially be giving you the money. And we simply don't have liquid cash sitting around right now. You have a house worth $2 million that we're not selling," Dad said firmly. "Rachel, I understand you're emotional." "Emotional? My daughter is dying." "Don't raise your voice," Mom said sharply. "We're trying to have a rational conversation." I looked at her, really looked at her. At her Cartier watch, her Hermes bag sitting on the entry table, her flawless hair and makeup. She'd probably spent $500 at the salon that week. "When's the last time you visited Sophie in the hospital?" I asked. Mom blinked. "We've been so busy with wedding preparations. 3 months. It's been 3 months since either of you came to see her, your only grandchild. She asks about you every week. When are Grandma and Grandpa coming? Don't they love me anymore?" I saw something flicker across Mom's face. Guilt, maybe, but it vanished quickly. "That's not fair," she said. "We love Sophie, but Madison is getting married. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. And Sophie dying? What's that?" Rachel Dad started. Madison could postpone the wedding. She could have a simple ceremony now and a big celebration later. She could. "Absolutely not," Mom said, her voice ice cold now. "Madison has been planning this wedding for 2 years. The invitations have been sent. 300 guests are flying to Cancun. We're not canceling or postponing because of this. Because my daughter is dying. Say it. Say the actual words." Neither of them would look at me. "Sophie can go on the waiting list," Dad said. "Kids are high priority. She'll get a kidney. In 3 to 5 years. She has 6 months. Maybe. Then she'll get a living donor," Mom said brightly, desperately. "You have friends? James had family? Surely someone, everyone who could donate has been tested. No matches." "Well," Dad stood up, signaling the conversation was over. "I'm sorry, Rachel. I truly am. But we can't help you financially right now. You'll have to find another way." I stood there, frozen, as my father walked past me toward the door. My mother followed, not meeting my eyes. "Madison's wedding is in 3 weeks, Mom said as she opened the front door for me. "We'd love to see you and Sophie there. It's in Cancun, at the Rosewood Resort. I know it's far, but Madison would be so happy if you came." I laughed. It was a horrible, broken sound. "You want me to bring my dying daughter to watch you spend $350,000 on a party?" "It's not a party. It's a wedding," Mom said stiffly. "And you don't need to be dramatic." I left without another word. The next 2 weeks were a blur of desperation. I called every bank, every lending company, even looked into predatory payday loan operations. Nothing. I was already too far in debt. Sarah helped me start a second fundraiser. My coworkers organized a charity car wash. The hospital held a raffle. We raised another $8,000. Still not enough. Sophie got weaker. They increased her dialysis to 5 times a week. She missed school constantly. Her friend stopped calling because she was always too tired to play or talk. "Mommy," she said one evening as I was helping her into bed, "you look sad." I tried to smile. "I'm just tired, baby. It's okay if I die," she said softly. My heart stopped. "Sophie, I don't want you to be sad anymore. Or work so hard. I see you crying when you think I'm asleep." I pulled her into my arms, this tiny, fragile thing that was my entire world. "You're not going to die. I won't let you." But I was lying. And she knew it. And I knew she knew it. The day of Madison's wedding, Sophie was back in the hospital. Another infection from the dialysis port. She was on IV antibiotics, her fever spiking to 103. My phone blew up with texts from Mom. "Where are you? The ceremony starts in an hour. Madison is asking for you." I turned my phone off and sat next to Sophie's hospital bed, holding her hand while she slept. That evening, as the sun set over Dallas, my family was on a beach in Cancun. I knew because I couldn't help myself. I turned my phone back on and looked at Madison's Instagram. 300 people in formal wear on white sand. A ceremony arch covered in orchids that probably cost more than a month of Sophie's medical care. Madison in a custom Vera Wang dress, $45,000, she'd mentioned in a previous post. The reception was at an outdoor venue overlooking the ocean. String lights everywhere, a live band, an open bar with a tequila ice luge. Dinner was surf and turf, lobster and Wagyu beef. Madison posted everything in real time. The cake cutting, the first dance, the fireworks display at midnight that she captioned, "Best night of my life," with 17 heart emojis. I watched it all on my phone screen while my daughter fought for her life 20 feet away. Sophie made it through the infection. Barely. "She's getting weaker," Dr. Patterson told me in early July. "Her kidney function is declining faster than we'd like. Without a transplant in the next 60 to 90 days. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I went home that night and found an envelope in my mailbox. Inside was a wedding announcement from Madison and Brett, with photos from the Cancun ceremony. There was a note in Madison's loopy handwriting. "Sorry you couldn't make it. It was absolutely perfect. Mom and Dad really outdid themselves. Hope Sophie is feeling better. We'll visit soon. XO Madison." I stared at that note for a long time. "We'll visit soon." They never did. August came. Sophie's 9th birthday. I threw her a party in her hospital room. Sarah and a few nurses helped me decorate. Some kids from her class came, but they were scared and uncomfortable around all the medical equipment. Sophie tried so hard to be happy. She smiled and thanked everyone for coming. But when they left, she cried. "I don't want to do this anymore, Mommy. I'm so tired." "I know, baby. I know." That night, after Sophie fell asleep, I did something I never thought I'd do. I found a medical tourism company online. There were hospitals in India, in Mexico, that did kidney transplants for a fraction of the US cost. But even the cheapest options required $40,000 up front, and the survival rates were not good. I closed my laptop and cried until there were no tears left. Labor Day weekend, Sophie coded. Her heart stopped for 2 minutes while they tried to stabilize her blood pressure during emergency dialysis. They got her back, but Dr. Patterson's face told me everything I needed to know. "Days," he said quietly. "Maybe a week." "I'm so sorry, Rachel." I called my parents. Dad answered. "Sophie's dying," I said flatly. "She has days. I thought you'd want to know." Silence. "We'll come see her tomorrow," he said finally. "Sure," I said, and hung up. They showed up the next afternoon. Mom was wearing Chanel. They stayed for exactly 15 minutes. Sophie was barely conscious, but she knew they were there. She tried to smile. "Hi, Grandma." "Hi, Grandpa." Mom patted her hand awkwardly. "Hi, sweetheart. You rest now." "Did you have fun at Aunt Madison's wedding?" Sophie whispered. "Oh, it was beautiful," Mom said, her voice bright. "Absolutely beautiful. We took so many pictures." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "I wish I could have seen it." Mom's face crumpled slightly, but she recovered. "Well, maybe when you're feeling better, we'll show you all the photos." But Sophie would never feel better. They left after 15 minutes, mumbling about a dinner reservation. I walked them out to the parking lot. "That's it?" I said. 15 minutes? What do you want from us, Rachel?" Dad said tiredly. We saw her. I wanted you to help save her life. Remember? 3 months ago, when there was still time?" "Don't," Mom said sharply. "Don't you dare blame us for this. Who else should I blame? The insurance company? The healthcare system? Or the grandparents who chose a party over their grandchild's life? Dad's face went red. We made a commitment to Madison. And what about your commitment to Sophie? She's 9 years old. She's dying because you wanted a good Instagram wedding. That's enough, Dad said coldly. You're upset. You're not thinking clearly. We'll talk when you've calmed down. They got in their Mercedes and drove away. I never saw them again. Sophie died 4 days later, on September 18th, 2022, at 6:47 inches the morning. I was holding her hand. Sarah was there too, on her day off, because she knew I couldn't do it alone. Love you, Mommy, Sophie whispered. Don't be sad. I love you too, baby. So much. She closed her eyes. The monitor showed her heartbeat slowing, and then it stopped. The sound I made wasn't human. It was something primal, animal. Sarah held me while I screamed. They unplugged the machines. The silence was deafening. I had to plan a funeral I couldn't afford. The hospital social worker helped me find a low-cost option, $3,500 for a basic service and cremation. I posted the funeral details on Facebook. My parents didn't respond. Neither did Madison. The service was small. 30 people, mostly nurses from the hospital and Sophie's teachers. Sarah gave a eulogy that made everyone cry. My parents showed up 10 minutes before the end. They stood in the back, dressed in black. When it was over, Mom approached me. I'm so sorry for your loss, she said formally, like I was a stranger. Get out, I said quietly. Rachel, we're your parents. We came to support. You came to look good. So people wouldn't talk about the grandparents who skipped their grandchild's funeral. Now get out. They left without another word. Madison texted me the next day. I heard about the funeral. Sorry I couldn't make it. Brett and I were in Napa for our 1-month anniversary trip. Hope you're doing okay. I blocked her number. The weeks after Sophie died were darkness. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't work. The hospital gave me a leave of absence, but it was unpaid. Bills piled up. The funeral cost. Sophie's final medical bills, $47,000 that insurance wouldn't cover. My mortgage. Everything. I lost the house in foreclosure that November. I moved into a studio apartment in Oak Cliff, the cheapest neighborhood I could find. I sold everything I owned except Sophie's blanket and her favorite stuffed rabbit. I went back to work in December. My coworkers tried to be supportive, but what could they say? Nothing would bring Sophie back. I avoided social media, but sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd look at Madison's Instagram. She'd moved into a penthouse apartment in downtown Dallas. She posted about shopping trips, expensive dinners, a trip to Paris for Fashion Week. Brett had bought her a new Range Rover for Christmas white, with red interior, blessed beyond measure. She captioned a photo of herself in front of it. I wanted to hate her. I did hate her. But mostly I hated myself for not being able to save Sophie. Months turned into years. I worked. I existed. I created a small memorial fund at the hospital in Sophie's name, just $100 a month, all I could afford, to help other families with transplant costs. I didn't speak to my parents. They didn't try to contact me. Madison sent me a Christmas card in 2023. I threw it away without opening it. Life moved on, even though part of me had died with Sophie. And then, in August 2025, my phone rang at 2 a.m. It was Madison. Rachel? Oh God, Rachel, please pick up. I know we haven't talked, but we need. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. What happened? I said flatly. It's Mom and Dad. Rachel, they're going to lose everything. The house, everything. We need help. We need money. I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. What? The story came tumbling out. Dad had gotten into cryptocurrency in 2023. Bitcoin, NFTs, something called DeFi that I didn't understand. He'd convinced himself he could 10x their retirement fund. Instead, he'd lost it all. $2 million, gone. They'd mortgaged the house to try to recover the losses. That money was gone too. The bank was foreclosing. They had 30 days. And Brett. Madison's voice broke. Brett left me. Last month. The divorce is final next week. I don't get anything. Prenup. I have nothing, Rachel. Mom and Dad have nothing. We're going to be homeless. I should have felt something. Satisfaction. Justice. Vindication. But all I felt was tired. Why are you calling me? I asked. Because we need $150,000. That's what Mom and Dad need to save the house. I thought maybe You're a nurse. You make good money. Maybe you could help or co-sign a loan or something. I laughed. It echoed in my empty apartment. You want me to help you? Your family, Madison said desperately. Family helps family. Do they? I said softly. Do they really? Rachel, please. I know things have been complicated, but this is serious. Mom's having panic attacks. Dad hasn't slept in days. We have nowhere to go. Sophie didn't have anywhere to go either, I said. She died in a hospital bed because her grandparents chose your wedding over her life. Silence. That was different, Madison whispered. How? Tell me how it was different. I don't. That was medical bills. This is our home. And Sophie's life? What was that worth? Less than $350,000 apparently. That's not fair. You want to talk about fair? I said, my voice rising. You want to talk about fair, Madison? I watched my daughter die. I held her hand while her heart stopped. I couldn't afford to keep her alive because your wedding was more important. And now you want me to save you? Madison was sobbing. Please. I'm sorry. We're all sorry. We were wrong, okay? We were so wrong. But please, Rachel, please. I hung up, but I couldn't sleep. I lay in the darkness, thinking. 3 days later, I called Madison back. I'll help, I said. Oh, thank God. Rachel, thank you so much. On one condition. Anything. You, Mom, and Dad make a video. A public video on Facebook. You'll post it on all your accounts. In the video, you'll explain exactly what happened. That in 2022, you refused to give me $120,000 to save Sophie's life because you were spending $350,000 on Madison's wedding. That Sophie died while you were in Cancun celebrating. That you chose a party over your granddaughter. You'll say all of that, publicly, and apologize. The video stays up for 7 days minimum. No deleting. No restricting who can see it. Silence. And then? Madison asked quietly. Then I'll give you $150,000. As a loan, not a gift. 8% interest per year. 10-year payment plan. With a legal contract. If you default, I sue for everything you have left. Rachel. A public video like that. My followers. My reputation. Your reputation, I repeated. That's what you're worried about. It's my career. I'm an influencer. If people think I'm a bad person, you are a bad person, Madison. And so are our parents. And I'm giving you a chance to own it and fix it. That's more than you gave Sophie. More silence. I need to talk to Mom and Dad, she said finally. You have 48 hours. After that, the offer expires. I hung up. For 2 days, my phone blew up. Madison called 17 times. Mom texted me paragraphs about how I was being cruel and vindictive. Dad left voicemails about family loyalty and forgiveness. I ignored all of them. On hour 47, Madison called one last time. We'll do it, she said, her voice dead. We'll make the video. All 3 of you. On camera. Saying everything I specified. Yes. Send it to me before you post it. I want to approve it first. The video arrived 2 hours later. It was excruciating to watch. The 3 of them sat on the couch in my parents' living room. The same couch where they'd refused to help me 3 years ago. Dad spoke first, his voice shaking. In 2022, our daughter Rachel asked us for financial help. Her daughter Sophie, our granddaughter, needed a kidney transplant. The cost was $120,000. We refused to help because we had committed to paying for our younger daughter Madison's wedding, which cost $350,000. Mom continued, tears streaming down her face. Sophie died that September. She was 9 years old. We chose a wedding over her life. We were wrong. We were horribly, inexcusably wrong. Madison went last. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes red. I got married in Cancun while my niece was dying in Dallas. I posted photos of my wedding on Instagram while Sophie was in the hospital. I was selfish and cruel. We all were. Dad finished. We're posting this because Rachel has offered to help us financially now, after we lost everything. She's a better person than we ever were. And we're deeply, deeply sorry. The video ended. I watched it 3 times. Then I approved it. They posted it simultaneously on all their social media accounts at 8 p.m. on a Thursday. By midnight, it had 500,000 views. By morning, it was national news. The comments were vicious. People found Madison's old Instagram posts from the wedding, the ones showing the cake and the fireworks and her white Range Rover. They found Mom's country club photos. They found Dad's LinkedIn where he'd bragged about his cryptocurrency investments. They were torn apart, completely and utterly destroyed in the court of public opinion. Monsters, people called them. How could anyone choose a wedding over a child's life? That poor little girl. Madison lost 287,000 followers in 3 days. The remaining 13,000 were mostly people who stuck around to leave hateful comments. Mom got kicked out of her book club. Her charity board asked her to step down. Dad had to delete his LinkedIn entirely. On day 7, as required, they unplugged the video. But the internet is forever. People had downloaded it, reposted it, made TikToks about it. It would follow them for the rest of their lives. True to my word, I transferred $150,000 to their account the next day. My lawyer had drawn up the contract. They signed it without reading it carefully. For 2 years, they made their monthly payments. $1,875 per month. They never missed one. And then, in November 2025, the payments stopped. I waited 30 days, as the contract specified. Then I sent a formal notice of default. Dad called me, something he hadn't done since I'd answered Madison's call. "We can't pay any more," he said. "I got a job, but it's not enough. The house is gone. We're renting a 2-bedroom apartment in Irving. We're barely surviving. The contract specified what happens if you default," I said calmly. "Rachel, please, don't sue us. We have nothing left to take. You had nothing to give Sophie either. For God's sake, how long are you going to punish us? How long was Sophie supposed to live, Dad? Another 60, 70 years? She got 9. 9 years because you chose wrong. We made a mistake." "No," I said. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the store. What you did was let your granddaughter die because a party was more important. That's not a mistake. That's a choice, and choices have consequences." I hung up, but I didn't sue them. I did something else. I took the $20,000 they'd paid me over 2 years and added $80,000 of my own money. I donated all of it to the hospital in Sophie's name. With that $100,000, they created the Sophie Chen Memorial Fund for Pediatric Transplant Assistance. It would help families afford the out-of-pocket costs of keeping their children alive. I posted about it on Facebook, along with the story of what had happened. I didn't tag my parents or Madison. I didn't need to. Everyone already knew. The post went viral. Within a month, donations poured in. $200,000. Then $500,000. Then $1 million. Local news came to interview me. Then national news. I told Sophie's story. All of it. The wedding, the refusal, her death, the video my family made, the fund we'd created. "Sophie didn't get to live," I said in the interview. "But maybe her story can help other children survive. Maybe that's her legacy." The interviewer asked if I'd forgiven my family. I thought about it carefully. "Forgiveness isn't something you give because someone asks for it," I said. "It's something you give when they've earned it. My family stood by while my daughter died. They've apologized, yes. They've been publicly shamed, yes. They've lost everything, yes. But that's not the same as making amends. That's just consequences." "So you haven't forgiven them?" "I've let go of the anger," I said. "I don't hate them anymore. But forgiveness? That's not for them. That's for me. And I'm not there yet. Maybe I never will be." The fund continued to grow. By December 2025, it had raised $2.3 million. We'd helped 37 families afford transplants for their children. 37 children who got to live. Sophie would have been 12. On what would have been her birthday, I visited her memorial spot at the hospital. They'd planted a tree in the healing garden with a plaque. "Sophie Chen, 2013 to 2022. Her light shines on." I sat under that tree for a long time. My phone buzzed. A text from Madison. "Saw the news about the fund. Sophie would be proud of you. I'm proud of you." For what it's worth, I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed back. "It's worth something. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something." She responded immediately. "That's more than I deserve." "Yes," I wrote back. "It is." I put my phone away and looked up at the tree. The winter sun filtered through the bare branches. I'd spent 3 years being angry. 3 years hating my family for what they'd done. 3 years wishing I could go back and change everything. But I couldn't change the past. Sophie was gone. That was a wound that would never fully heal. All I could do was try to make sure fewer families had to feel what I felt. Fewer mothers had to watch their children die for lack of money. Fewer children had to suffer because the people who were supposed to protect them chose wrong. The fund was Sophie's legacy. But it was mine too. I didn't save my daughter. But maybe in her name, I could save someone else's. That would have to be enough. I stood up, touched the tree's trunk gently, and walked back to my car. My phone buzzed again. Another notification from the fund's donation page. Someone had given $500 with a note. In memory of Sophie, no child should die because of money. I smiled through tears. No, I whispered. No child should. Somewhere, I wanted to believe, Sophie was smiling too.